6 discoveries, 6 places on the map. And between them, they don't just challenge the official timeline, they dismantle the whole framework we were taught to trust. Start with this. In April 2025, a team led by Egyptologist Zahi Hawass broke open a sealed limestone shaft at Saqqara, the ancient necropolis 30 kilometers south of Cairo. Inside, they found the tomb of Prince Djoser Ifrey, son of the pharaoh who founded Egypt's 5th dynasty, a man who lived more than 4,400 years ago. The tomb had never been touched. The walls were covered in bright painted reliefs so vivid, archaeologists on site said they looked freshly made. The centerpiece was a false door carved from pink granite, standing nearly 15 feet tall, the largest and most distinctive of its kind ever found in Egypt. And that was just the beginning of what Saqqara was hiding. By the time this video ends, you'll have 6 data points that academic journals are quietly describing as requiring a reassessment of prior models. That is the polite language of people whose map just stopped matching the territory. The official story of human civilization is clean, neat. It goes hunter-gatherers survive, then farming, then villages, then writing, then complexity. Each layer stacked neatly on the last, like a textbook you could hand to a child and say, this is how it happened. The problem is the ground. Every time someone puts a shovel into it, or in one case, an excavator digging a gas pipeline, what comes out doesn't fit the diagram. In 2024 and 2025, the pace of those contradictions accelerated. 6 discoveries, 6 places on the map. And between them, they don't just challenge the official timeline, they dismantle the whole framework we were taught to trust. Let's take them one by one. Discovery 1, Saqqara, Egypt. The necropolis everyone thought they understood. Saqqara is not a site, it is a city of the dead. 7 kilometers long, 5 wide. The largest ancient burial complex in the world, in active use for 3,000 consecutive years. The Step Pyramid of Djoser, Egypt's earliest large-scale stone structure, commissioned more than 4,600 years ago, stands at its center. Archaeologists have been digging here for over a century. You'd think there was nothing left to find. In April 2025, Zahi Hawass announced the discovery of the tomb of Prince Djoser Ifrey, son of King Djoser, founder of Egypt's 5th dynasty. The team, a collaboration between Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities and the Hawass Foundation, opened a vertical limestone shaft and found a multi-chambered burial that had sat undisturbed for more than 4 millennia. The pink granite false door, alone nearly 5 meters tall, the first of its kind ever recorded in Egypt by both size and material, was covered in hieroglyphs listing the prince's titles: hereditary prince, royal scribe, vizier, judge, governor. This was not a minor official. This was a man at the highest levels of the most powerful civilization on Earth, and we had no idea where he was buried until last spring. But the details inside the tomb are what stop you cold. 13 pink granite statues on high-backed chairs, the first of their kind found anywhere in Saqqara. A statue group depicting King Djoser, his wife, and their 10 daughters, found together for the first time in recorded history. Preliminary analysis suggests those statues had been moved from inside the Step Pyramid complex at some point in antiquity. Someone, centuries after the pharaoh's death, went into the pyramid, removed his family's likenesses, and placed them here. Why? We don't know. The tomb was also reused during Egypt's 26th dynasty, more than 1,000 years after it was first sealed. Layer upon layer of intention, ritual, and decision-making that nobody understood was happening because nobody knew the room existed. This is a site that has been excavated continuously for over 100 years. What's still under the sand? Archaeologists working the area have suggested that what's been uncovered may represent only a fraction of what remains. Every season, new shafts, new chambers, new questions. The official version says Saqqara is well understood. The shovel says otherwise. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Discovery 2, Southeast Asia and Southern China. The mummies that predate Egypt by thousands of years. You know Egypt, bandages, canopic jars. The elaborate ritual of defeating death with chemistry and ceremony. The Egyptian mummification tradition begins, by most accounts, during the Old Kingdom roughly 4,500 years ago. That's the number in the textbooks. That's the starting point. Except a study published in September 2025 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, one of the most rigorously peer-reviewed journals on Earth, found evidence of deliberate mummification going back at least 12,000 years, not in Egypt, in the jungles of Southeast Asia and southern China. An international research team examined 54 pre-Neolithic burials from 11 archaeological sites, spread across the region's sites in Vietnam, southern China, Indonesia, Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and the Philippines. The burials shared something strange. The bodies were found in tightly crouched, flexed postures, knees pulled to the chest, arms wrapped tight, as if the person had been folded and bound. For a long time, archaeologists classified these as ordinary primary burials. The body laid to rest in a single ceremony. Move on, nothing to see. But the research team applied X-ray diffraction and Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy techniques that can read what heat has done to bone at the molecular level, and the results were not what anyone expected. The bones from 9 of the 11 sites showed clear evidence of extended, low-temperature heating. Not a funeral pyre, not accidental burning. Something slow, something deliberate. Something sustained over weeks. The researchers concluded that these bodies had been smoke-dried over smoldering fires, folded into a compact shape, likely bound with cord, then suspended above a controlled, low flame for an extended period. The smoke penetrated the tissues gradually. The moisture left. The body was preserved. The PNAS paper describes this as the oldest known evidence of artificial mummification anywhere in the world, predating the Chinchorro culture of northern Chile, which had been considered among the earliest, and predating ancient Egypt's Old Kingdom by thousands of years. Some of the samples carry cut marks on the bone. The researchers believe those were intentional, made to help moisture escape from the tissue more quickly. These were not people stumbling through a process. This was technique. Refined, understood, passed down. And here is the detail that changes the scale of it entirely. The practice didn't die. In the New Guinea highlands today, communities still smoke preserve their ancestors and keep the preserved figures in dedicated structures or on cliff ledges. Genetic analysis has linked those modern groups to the same ancient hunter-gatherer populations across Southeast Asia. The cultural thread, unbroken, runs from at least 12,000 years ago to the present day. The paper describes it as a mortuary tradition that persisted for over 10,000 years among genetically related communities, the longest continuously documented ritual practice in human history. People who did not yet farm wheat, who had not yet made pottery, who had not yet built monuments. Those people looked at death and developed a technology to hold it back. Long before the pyramids, long before the pharaohs, long before anything the official timeline calls civilization. Coincidence? Possibly. But a coincidence that sits very uncomfortably close to a systematic rewriting of who first conquered death. But that's not all. Discovery 3. Turkey, on the bank of the Tigris River, a site called Bankaklu Tarla. The name means beaded field in Turkish, which tells you something about what the topsoil was hiding. The site is in southeastern Anatolia, in Mardin province, not far from the Syrian border. It was found by accident in 2008 during a geological survey ahead of dam construction and excavations led by Dr. Ergül Kodaş of Mardin Artuklu University began in 2012. What they found is still being processed, and what it implies is not yet in any standard account of human prehistory. Bankaklu Tarla has been continuously occupied for over 12,000 years. 6 distinct cultural layers, one beneath the other, stretching from the late Epipaleolithic, the tail end of the last ice age, through the pre-pottery Neolithic. These were people who had not yet made ceramic vessels, had not yet domesticated crops at scale, were, by every measure in the textbooks, at an early and simple stage of human development. And yet, in the center of a cluster of circular huts, the team found a rectangular building, a communal structure unlike anything surrounding it. Stone walls, stone benches running along the interior, carved figures embedded in the walls. The excavators identified it as a public building, possibly a temple, drawing immediate comparisons to Göbekli Tepe, the massive stone sanctuary 90 miles to the northwest that rewrote what we thought we knew about organized religion. But Bankaklu Tarla has something Göbekli Tepe does not: a sewer system, a drainage system, confirmed by the excavation team, dating to approximately 11,800 years ago. Archaeology magazine reported the team's own words. They uncovered a portion of the sewer system in a confirmed public use area. If that dating holds, it would be the oldest engineered water infrastructure ever recorded on Earth. Hunter-gatherers, people who, by the official timeline, were not yet supposed to be building anything permanent, designed and built a drainage system for a public building. The artifact count from the site is staggering. More than 200 human skeletons. More than 200,000 beads crafted from stone, shell, and bone, giving the site its name. Obsidian tools, stone vessels, ritual walking sticks, evidence of buildings that may have stood as tall as 7 meters. And a 2025 genomic study confirmed that the people who lived here were genetically distinct from the Anatolian farmers who came afterward, a separate population, a mixture of local Epipaleolithic hunter-gatherers and people from the Eastern Fertile Crescent, leaving no direct genetic trace in the groups that followed. They built temples, they installed drainage, they buried hundreds of their dead with tens of thousands of handmade beads. And then they vanished from the genetic record, replaced by people who were different, who did not continue what had been built. A civilization of sorts, on the banks of the Tigris, 6,000 years before Sumer, that simply disappeared. The official framing is early social complexity. The data suggests something more specific and more unsettling than that phrase allows. If that alone is hard to explain, now it gets really interesting. Discovery 4, the Aegean Sea and a wreck site that keeps rewriting its own story. In the spring of 1900, Greek sponge divers sheltering from a storm near the tiny island of Antikythera slipped underwater and found a field of bronze and marble on the seafloor. The wreck of a Roman-era ship, dating to the 1st century BC, lying at a depth of around 45 to 70 meters. Over the following year, divers brought up dozens of bronze and marble statues, glass bowls, gold jewelry, coins, and one corroded lump of bronze gears that nobody quite knew what to make of. That lump became the Antikythera mechanism, a device of interlocking bronze gears, now understood to have modeled the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, predicted eclipses, and tracked the cycles of the Greek athletic games. Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution has stated that the mechanism predates anything else approaching its level of sophistication by more than 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Nothing comparable appears in the historical record between the mechanism and the medieval period. It was built, it worked, and then the knowledge of how to build it was gone. The wreck has been excavated in stages across more than a century, but large sections remained untouched. In 2024, the Swiss School of Archaeology in Greece, leading the current 2021-2025 research program, confirmed something that earlier surveys had only suggested. A second ship lies at the site, approximately 200 meters from the primary wreck, with similar amphora types and the same era. 2 ships going down in the same waters. The 2024 expedition also brought up around 300 new artifacts, including 18 marble statue fragments, a substantial section of the ship's hull, the most complete hull section ever recovered, and a war dolphin. A 100 kilogram lead weight tipped with an iron spike designed to be dropped from a ship's yardarm through the hull of an enemy vessel. This is the only example of that ancient naval weapon ever found, a trade ship carrying it, which raises a question the excavators haven't answered. What was on board that required a weapon of that kind? In 2025, the Swiss school returned and retrieved 3 connected hull planks and their internal frame found in 2024, but too fragile to move until a specially designed extraction system was built. The wood has been tentatively dated to around 235 BC. The ship itself went down somewhere in the 1st century BC. It sailed, by that estimate, for roughly 170 years before it sank. A terracotta mortar, a kitchen implement from the ship's cook, was also recovered. One of the first direct material records of what was prepared in a galley kitchen on an ancient Mediterranean cargo vessel, and the hold where the Antikythera mechanism was originally found, still largely unexcavated. Woods Hole has noted that several large objects moved by the Greek Navy during the original 1901 salvage may be not boulders, but large statues, the kind of colossal marble figures covered by centuries of marine growth that would look, from a distance, like rock. The same site produced the famous Colossus of Heracles, now in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. If there are more figures like it on that seafloor, they've been sitting there since before the birth of Julius Caesar. 1,000 years of lost technology, a second ship, a war weapon on a merchant vessel, and a cargo hold that hasn't been fully opened yet. We are not at the core yet. Discovery 5, southeastern Turkey. Again, but this time, the question isn't what they built, it's who they were. Go back to Bonkuklu Tarla and look at the genetic data published in 2025. The community that built those temples, installed that drainage, and buried the dead with 200,000 beads, they were not the ancestors of the people who came after them. The genomic analysis, published in 2025, shows these individuals as a distinct cluster. Local Epipaleolithic hunter-gatherers mixed with populations from the Eastern Fertile Crescent, with no close genetic affinity to the Anatolian farmers who eventually spread across the region and beyond. In other words, The people who built the earliest known drainage system in the world, who erected a communal temple at least as old as Göbekli Tepe, who maintained a settlement continuously for generations, they are not in our family tree in any direct way. They left their buildings, they left their beads, they left their bones, and then the genetic line ends. Who were they? Where did the Eastern Fertile Crescent component come from? People moving up through what is now Iraq and Iran into Anatolia before the Neolithic even fully began. What happened to them? The official model says population replacement was common in prehistoric Eurasia. True. But replacement of a people capable of this kind of construction before pottery, before farming at scale, before any of the markers we associate with the capacity for that level of organization, that's not a footnote. That's a missing chapter. And here's where it gets uncomfortable in a different way. Discovery 6, the North Caucasus, Chechnya, and a lost city found under a gas pipeline. In March 2026, construction workers laying a major natural gas pipeline near the village of Mayertup in Chechnya hit something unexpected. The excavators broke into the first of what would become a vast complex of burials and fortifications. Russian archaeologists from the Institute of Archaeology were called in, led by Vladimir Malyshev. They stopped the construction and began to map what they'd found. The site covers, by estimates, an area of around 350 hectares, an enormous footprint for a medieval settlement in this region. Massive fortification walls, a developed system of defensive structures, rich burial assemblages with coins and ornaments. Cultural layers spanning from the Chalcolithic, the Copper Age, through the late medieval period. People lived here across multiple epochs, across religions, across empires. Then a Chechen archaeologist on the team, Azamat Akhmedov, said a name: Magus. The legendary capital of the Atlantic state, a capital that historians and archaeologists had been searching for, without success, for over a century. The Alans were an Iranian-speaking people, known across the ancient world for their heavily armed cavalry, their role in the migration period that reshaped post-Roman Europe, and their position as gatekeepers of the trade routes between the Black Sea and Central Asia. Arab chroniclers writing between the 9th and 11th centuries, Ibn Rushd and al-Bakri among them, described Magas as a great city reachable in 3 days of travel from the kingdom of Syria in what is now Highland Dagestan. The location of the Mayertup complex matches those geographic references more precisely than any previous candidate site had. For decades, archaeologists searched for Magas in North Ossetia and Ingushetia in the Chechen foothills. In the 1990s, when the Republic of Ingushetia needed a capital, it named the new city Magas in honor of the legendary Alanic center, whose location was still, at that point, pure hypothesis. And now, an excavator digging a gas trench may have answered a 100-year-old question. At a press conference in March 2026, Vladimir Malyshev was careful. He said Akhmedov's hypothesis was, and this is a direct rendering of his assessment, the least contradictory of all previous attempts to locate Magas. On the scale of archaeological caution, that is a significant statement. The site has the scale, the fortifications, the artifact richness, and the geographic alignment that no previous candidate possessed in combination. Confirmatory work coin analysis, paleoclimatic data, systematic comparison with the Arab language texts will take years. But the shape of the finding is already forcing historians to revisit the map of the medieval Caucasus, a city that entire academic careers were built around finding. Found, possibly, by a machine operator who was trying to run a gas line. Lay the data points side by side. 1. A royal tomb sealed for 4,400 years, opened in 2025 in a necropolis that has been excavated for a century, containing the first pink granite false door of its kind. A statue group never before recorded, and layers of decision-making by ancient people we cannot yet explain. 2. Mummies in Southeast Asia predating Egypt's Old Kingdom by at least 7,000 years, proven by molecular analysis published in a top-tier journal in September 2025, a ritual tradition that never died, and that's been running continuously for more than 10 millennia. 3. A 12,000-year-old settlement on the Tigris with a sewer system, built by a genetically distinct population that left no descendants in the region, people capable of engineering and communal organization that the textbook timeline places thousands of years in the future. 4. A wreck in the Aegean that gave the world its only ancient analog computer, a device with no technological peer for 1,000 years, and in 2024 revealed a second ship at the same site, still yielding weapons and statues in a cargo hold that hasn't been fully excavated. 5. The genetic ghost at Bankuklu Tarla, a people who built before agriculture, who engineered before pottery, and who vanished from the lineage without passing on what they knew. 6. A legendary medieval capital, searched for by scholars for over 100 years, unearthed by infrastructure workers who were trying to install a pipe. The textbook model says civilization is a ladder. You climb it, rung by rung, in a clean and predictable order. Simple to complex, stone to metal, tribal to urban. What these 6 discoveries collectively suggest, not prove, suggest is something more like a broken staircase in a dark room. Pockets of complexity, surrounded by simplicity. Advanced knowledge that appeared, functioned, and then disappeared without leaving a clear trail of inheritance. A Neolithic people installing drainage before their neighbors learned to fire clay. An analog computing device that nobody could replicate for 1,000 years. A mummification tradition that ran for 12 millennia while the civilization credited with inventing mummification hadn't been born yet. None of this proves that the official story is a lie. What it proves is that the official story is incomplete in ways that the people writing it did not fully anticipate. The journals know it. The language is right there in the publications. Reassessment of prior models expands our understanding, requires revisiting the chronology. Those phrases are how institutions say, we were wrong about the shape of this. And the deeper the shovels go, or the ROVs, or the infrared spectrometers, or the gas pipeline excavators, the more the shape changes. Think about what's still down there. Saqqara alone, by some estimates, may have been only partially excavated after a century of work. The Antikythera hold hasn't been opened. The boulders on the seafloor may be statues. Bonchiklu Tarla has layers below the ones they've reached. The Mertup complex is 350 hectares, and the archaeologists have touched a fraction of it. The ancient world isn't a closed chapter, it's an open excavation site. And every time someone breaks the surface, there's a decent chance the diagram in the textbook needs to be redrawn. That's not the weakness of science. It's what science actually looks like when it's working. The question that should keep you up at night isn't whether these discoveries are real. They are documented, peer-reviewed, announced by the institutions themselves. The question is, what else is still sealed in the shafts we haven't opened yet? The next video goes to one of those sealed shafts, a specific site, a specific anomaly, and a specific measurement that the people who've studied it for decades still cannot explain. Not can't explain easily, can't explain at all. That one's coming. Don't miss it.